Hey guys, what's going on? This is Brad from the Ad Army, and today, as you can tell, I have these cards out of Special Booster 2.0 that you should not sleep on and get these cards while you have the opportunity. I do like this set, and I do think there's a lot of cards out of this set that you should pick up before they are very expensive, and I mean like astronomically more expensive than they should. All the cards featured today are, at the time of recording, the price that they are. They could be more expensive by the time you have already seen this video or post, but I'm trying my best because we obviously are getting close to the holiday season and people will be buying up stuff in terms of card games. So I want you to get your cards while you have the chance. But before that, remember, as always, you should like, comment, and subscribe down below. It's a little request we ask of you that does help make the channel grow. And with that being said, we're going to jump straight into it, as we will start with the first card. And like I said, don't sleep on these, as we have the first one being Tiger Vespamon. As Tiger Vespamon out of Special Booster 2.0 is amazing, as a lot of people are love this card as a fan favorite Digimon because it's just so cool looking for the most part. It really has the aesthetic of what Digimon is, and it does carry a lot of interesting things, and it is a very useful Digimon, being a part of technically two strategies, but more importantly focused around the Royal Base strategy, which it is going to be united with. When we look at what Tiger Vespamon does in terms of its effects, what it can do, also the fact that it is technically treated as an insectoid, so it always has support connected to like Tyrant Kabuterimon and all the other insectoid cards. This Digimon is amazing. Now, if you're wondering why I would choose to have this card on the list, I mean, this is one of the easier ones I personally think, as this card's effect in Royal Base means that whenever Royal Base support comes, we do know that this card will obviously see more expensive pricing. Additionally, because of its presence in the Lucky Pack right now, in the Special Booster 2.0, the amount of Tiger Vespamons have sort of increased in terms of the standard super rare, so there's more of a chance to actually have this card copies than it would be otherwise. But when we're looking at exactly what Tiger Vespamon offers for a lot of decks, this is just a solid boss Digimon. Besides its actual effect that uses face-up security cards, this card actually has amazing synergy in a lot of other strategies, like I mentioned before. As when we look at its abilities in something like specifically Insectoid, right? This Digimon is actually insane because with Tyrant Kabuterimon's effect, you can play this thing for 4 cost, because it will reduce the play cost by 8. So having this boss Digimon already brought to the field that's this strong for 4 cost is insane. It having piercing and reboot, and it's being able to basically unsuspend when it deletes a Digimon. It's very good, and it's an all when any or during all turns. So what makes this really good is that Tiger Vespamon can basically restand whenever Digimon are deleted anywhere. So this becomes basically a big threat to your opponent, because if they delete their own Digimon, you can unsuspend Tiger Vespamon and he's ready to go. Additionally, like I mentioned before with Royal Base, this is basically one of your more powerful aggression tools in Royal Base outside of Queen Beemon. So basically both of these cards have a place in their decks, and they're respectively used for different reasons, where Tiger Vespamon clears threats. Queen Beemon goes for security. So both of them have an important role in the deck, and it is one of the more, I would say, center focuses of the deck, because it is your boss Digimon. Now, one of the reasons I would tell you to pick up this card before it gets any more expensive is simple. We do know that in the future, and thanks to something like Cyber Sleuth, that Tiger Vespamon has a tamer waiting for it in the form of Fei Wong. So it's only a matter of time before we get either more Royal Base support thanks to Liberator, or when we get a Cyber Sleuth based deck. I think Tiger Vespamon will obviously receive more support in order to go with that tamer if they so choose to push it, because at this point they don't need to grasp for straws, but there's a lot more tamers who still haven't come to the game, and they can actually support their decks in many different ways. And because of that, at the time of recording, Tiger Vespamon is sitting around the $2.50 to $3 mark. This card can easily be a $7 to $8 card, so I would just tell you to get your copies while you have the opportunity, because this card may not be cheap for very long, and it's better you get it before it's expensive. Moving into our next Digimon, I have 2 of the same Digimon, as we have both of the Lord Nightmons in the form of Lord Nightmon Ace alongside Lord Nightmon from BT19. As both of these cards are a little bit easier to understand, because this 2 cards allow different strategies to be formulated in the form of the Nightmon strategy. These 2 are paramount in completing their own strategy, but for something like Dark Nightmon, they are indirect support that allow that deck to go even further than it should. It's because both of these cards exist that they allow themselves to be almost a thought through of building that strategy. Additionally, as well, you cannot forget that Lord Nightmon X had come into the Special Booster 2.0 as well, meaning that all support for the Lord Nightmon deck, at least of the current time of recording, has been printed in the actual set. So this deck is technically at full power. But when we look at just the synergies between both Lord Nightmon Ace and Lord Nightmon X, we also have the synergies between Lord Nightmon X and BT19's Lord Nightmon, which allow themselves to play off each other extremely well. As obviously, I think the combo is you use Lord Nightmon from BT19 to play out a Digimon with this one Digivolving effect, then immediately go into Lord Nightmon X, so that if that Digimon is a Nightmon Digimon, you're now able to effectively use that alliance and that collision effect a lot better, and you get to de-Digivolve. So it's a very strong combination. In conjunction with the other support that I mentioned before that was brought into this set, that are here in terms of like the full wave. You also have the Dark Nightmon cards that have come early, so I do think that this was a design to kind of make sure that all of the support for Lord Nightmon was available for this specific format we're going to have, and it allows this deck to be a meta contender relatively quickly. I do think that was the design in mind. And don't let the price fool you, as both of these cards right now are hovering in different areas. As Lord Nightmon Ace is hovering at about $250 for a single copy, and up, as well as the BT19 Lord Nightmon, although being a rare, is about 50 cents. My point of it is these two cards can easily go up in price relatively quickly. This isn't just one of these situations where you can ignore the fact that these cards are going to be good, because they already are good. But the problem is, if the representation goes up in a single tournament, then all of a sudden these cards can be very expensive. And like I said, I don't want you guys to be left holding the bag, wondering why you didn't get your copies when they were cheap. Now, moving into my next one, I have arguably one of my favorite cards, and thanks to Liberators, one of my favorite theme decks, as we will be looking into the waters at Ryugan now. As Ryugan is arguably one of the most slept on cards, I think, of BT19, but thankfully in Special Booster 2.0, I think this card's absolutely amazing for what it does. So when we look at what Ryugan can do, it offers a lot of different things that a lot of decks I think needed of this specific category in terms of being blue. So first, Ryugan has a good basically removal effect when it is removed with the form of Decode, allowing you to play back the level 5 source in its actual evolution cards. Additionally, when it digivolves, you get to play out a level 4 lower blue card from its sources, so already really strong with stuff like the aquatic strategies. And additionally, at the end of your turn, you can return one of your Digimon to the bottom of the deck, and then you return one of your opponent's Digimon with as high or as low of a level as it had to the bottom of the deck. It is always treated with having the aquatic typing, and it also is a Liberator card. Now, I had to mention all of these because all of these different little pieces add on to the layer of all the other strategies I'm talking about that this card supports, in the form of a lot of the aquatic based decks or a lot of the decks that have like source stripping. This card gives you an additional removal in the form of its actual effects. It also synergizes extremely well with the aquatic strategies because it is obviously treated as an aquatic Digimon, so inherently there's synergy there. And for Digimon that want a new boss Digimon to go alongside maybe one of their other boss Digimon, or to synergize with some of their ace Digimon in case of the Zudomon/Vikemon strategy, this card does all of that and more, giving the deck more layers of interaction as well as layers of interruption, which I think was desperately needed for some of these other strategies. Additionally, right now you can have Ryugan for a cost of a single dollar, but this card is going above and below that. So the main focus is this card can easily be a $6 to $7 card. And I'd rather you guys get it when it was only a buck, because this card will see more play in the future. It's only a matter of time. And I do really believe that, because this card's fantastic, and I will talk about Aquatic in another video. Moving into my next one, I actually have a very interesting one, and this one is the BT19 Machinedramon. Now you're probably thinking, why is this one on the list, considering it's an uncommon and it's very cheap? I'm actually talking about the promo version of this card that came in the actual set itself that you got as a special pack. But the point I want to talk about with BT19's Machinedramon is actually its purpose in the future. So what makes this deck so interesting, and this card specifically, is that this one is important for obviously Machinedramon, which is a very good deck, but in Millenniumon, this card is one of the more important ones in conjunction with the other Machinedramon. You play some number of both, but this one's really important because of its synergy with the Digicrossing mechanic, which allows itself to kind of come out and be a pseudo boss if maybe you don't have access to Millenniumon yet. And I think that's really neat. However, when we're talking about its actual synergy in its actual deck in terms of the form of the machine slash cyborg strategy, this card starts to explode in terms of being rather unique, as it's another Machine Dramon that's actually rather unique because it can on-play itself and it can come into play for only 6 costs, which I think is really good for this strategy because now you have another Machine Dramon to play with. It has a good on-play when Digivolving effect to get rid of level 5 and lower Digimon, and then on deletion it lets you play back one of your level 5 or lower cyborgs or composite Digimon. I think what you're starting to see with this Machine Dramon, even with its inheritable, is that this one is very versatile. So anytime support comes up that really inflicts with both of those decks, whether it's Cyborg or even more Millenniumon support, you do have to understand that this Machine Dramon will get looked at more so than its counterpart from BT18, because it actually just has a little bit more genericness than it does with its counterpart. Now, this card isn't that expensive right now, sitting at about 50 cents, but I do put this here because if you want to play the max rarity version of it, which this is technically, I would suppose is currently this one, you would have to pick it up. And as you guys know, with pre-release cards and some other things, if they happen to be foils of uncommon cards, they're usually extremely expensive. And I'd rather you guys, like I said before, not get hot holding the bag, realizing that you should have bought this when it was very cheap. As I know, this could run you a bit of money if they're expensive and you want a max rarity, but get it while it's cheap, because if it's under $1, it's kind of worth it. You get the shinier version, and it's not that bad. Now we're going to move into our last one, and I just want to thank you guys for watching. But let's jump into the 2 cards I have here, which is both Kumamon and Korikakumon from Special Booster 2.0 or BT18s. Now these 2 are very unique for a different reason, and I'll actually have a video focusing on both of these cards to show why they are so interesting. But the main focus I want to talk about with these 2 is that unlike all of the other hybrid cards, these 2 actually serve a very unique purpose in other decks that are unlike their generic counterparts. Now, obviously, you're probably thinking, well, what could they offer considering of how their evolution conditions are and all that stuff? But the main focus is they're treated as having the new Ice Snow trait. Now, this is very important, or Ice Snow type, but point is, this is very important to understand that these cards have some viability in the future, as more Ice Snow cards will be coming, and they already technically have unintended synergy, or intended synergy, if you want to consider it with the Ice Snow trait, with the already existing Ice Snow cards from the EX7. So already these cards have a viability in that strategy because they offer their abilities by being Ice Snow cards, because they can be played for free off of something like Summon Blizzard. But the main focus I want to talk about with these cards is the power that they offer these strategies. Now, obviously, if you're wondering why, it's because they have, and more importantly, in the form of Kumamon, it has trashing effects, which means inherently if you want to use Tamers in the Ice Snow decks, you can use Tommy, and by proxy using Tommy, you can use Kumamon, and by using Kumamon, you can also use Korikakumon, as all three, but these 2 cards specifically, work in tandem with the decks that they are intended to work with, as they offer both power and stripping consistency, but they also rely on an interesting factor that you can give your entire strategy jamming with the inclusion of Korikakumon, which I do think you run these cards together, because if you just run Kumamon, it does work, but at that point you don't need to run Kumamon. I think if you're not running it with Korikakumon, you're not really getting the max value of what the deck is actually intended to do. As I do think in Ice Snow, specifically with Hexablaumon, these 2 cards together with Hexablaumon are honestly very good, and you can give your Hexablaumon jamming, which I think even with Ice Clad as an effect, I think it's still cool to have jamming as an option, just on the off chance that you're playing against a deck that has like a random stack or Digicross decks. You don't have to worry about it. You'll have the jamming. You won't lose in battle. And it's just always good to give yourself more options. And at the current time of recording, we have fluctuation prices, as Kumamon's arguably the more expensive of the 2, being a super rare, and it is fluctuating between $3 and up. At the time, it could be even higher because people might be trying out some of the new strategies like the Unified Hybrid deck, which I know is taking a lot of Kumamon off of the market. But also, Korikakumon is a rare and it's extremely cheap, so it's only at about 15 cents, hovering around there. And this card is still fantastic. Like I said, generically gives you jamming, so you got to look at it. But the point is, these 2 cards would make up a package, and I would rather you guys get them before you get left holding the bag. And that's it, guys. So like I said, don't sleep on these cards. All of them have a purpose. All of them are very good. And it does allow you a chance to get ahead of the game in the future when you pick up cards while they're cheap. So you can play them and have fun, but also know that you're not putting out a ton of money. I hope you guys did like this. And as always, this has been Brad from the Ad Army signing off. And for all of you out there, to sign on.